Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to see you here today. Um, I guess the preamble is that I'm starting to look at on Fridays as the Dharma Lab. I don't know if you remember your science classes where there was the lectures and you understood theoretically what they were talking about, and then you went to the lab and you actually got to do something with your hands with a lab partner and sort of practice or learn what they were actually talking about. And I think that's what I like to do is to, I mean, we can't all do it together, but you can listen to my story and you can imagine your own story, your own experimentation with your life and the Dharma. So that being said, what could I possibly talk about any more than grieving in this transition in my life? So we could call it loss, we could call it grief, we could call it any number of things like that. Um, and I guess it's just important to really say it's everybody is totally different, right? I mean, no one's experience is ever going to be the same. And one of my fears is that people are going to project onto me their own feelings of grief and loss. And I just really don't welcome that right now. Maybe there'll come a time when I can, pull myself back from the emotion that's coming toward me. But like yesterday, my neighbor just found out and she just gave me this huge hug and she was, just like, no, please don't do that. But I can't, I mean, I let her do it, but it was like, it wasn't helpful to me. It wasn't about my grief. It was about some grief she had had or anticipated having. Because actually, in the first stages of my loss, I was ecstatic. I was in an altered state. I was beyond myself. And it happened because Dave and I accompanied Dave in his dying. And I was there 100% or more. I was there in all the ways I had wanted to be there with him just during our life together, our 55 years together. But between it's hard to be who you want to be all the time. But in those last days, I really was able to be who I wanted to be, who I knew I could be, and together, Dave died peacefully as one can, and it was an extraordinary experience. And so for several days, I was just wow. I was just walking around in an altered state. And people, my friends who wanted to support me, I think were confused. Like, what's to support here? She's doing great. But it was only when I was by myself and Tomboy was to be seen. Yes, he wanted to get down. He didn't like this kind of talk, I guess. So it took a while to kind of come back to earth. And the way they do things in the mortuary world is you have to wait a certain amount of time before the official announcement is made in the form of a death certificate. So there's kind of a limbo period where nothing can really happen. You can't get on with the business of life because it hasn't really happened yet officially. So I had, basically 2 weeks to come to terms with what was happening and come to terms with my own experience of it. But the ecstasy lasted quite a nice amount of time, and I was able to see it. I was able to see that it was an altered state, but I was grateful for it, and I accepted it, and I wasn't in any hurry to move it along. Although I knew the day was coming when I would have to kind of, pull up my shorts or socks or whatever that expression is. So let me see what I was going to say next. I guess what I wanted to say was that the social worker who was part of the hospice came and visited us briefly and told me later that she that she'd seen a lot of people die, and that she felt that Dave had taken control of his dying process, and that she was pleased to see that that was something that was um, fruitful. It was, she didn't have any afterlife stories, but she felt that that was a really good experience for both of us. And I hadn't exactly seen it that way, so it was helpful to have some, kind of dispassionate view saying, yeah, you guys did a really good job. And she did include me in that, and that it was something that we had done together. So I felt maybe that was the beginning of coming down from that altered state, that I could see that there had been two people there instead of just the one of, Dave and me together for all that time. But still, it went on, and I haven't felt that overwhelming grief that a lot of people kind of expect or look for or experience themselves. And I've been wondering about that, like, well, what's wrong with me? And then I realized what's wrong with me is that when I was 3, my parents divorced. And there was never any stability after that. We moved from place to place. Each of my parents remarried 2 times. So I never had any steady place until I met Dave and got married to him. So I was very used to dealing with loss. That little girl learned about loss, that it was part of the game and you don't get too attached to anything. But that's an intellectual way of thinking about it. It was just things change. Things are always changing. And I've been grateful for that in my life, that I don't cling to things. I see what's happening. I accept it. I bring it in. There were 2 times when that was tested. One, maybe 30 years ago, Dave had a melanoma on his back, and everybody knows about melanoma, you die. So I went through oh, that could happen. And I remember being frightened and not knowing what to do with myself. And then he got the surgery and it was all gone, and we never really thought of it again, except that he had a big scar on his back that faded with the years. And then I didn't believe in, impermanence until I got my own cancer diagnosis, and I thought, oh, I could die. Oh, that's different. And I remember coming to terms when I was sitting out under my oak tree, like, oh, there is a higher power. The higher power is death, and death does win out. And it was like, yeah, I really understood that. I felt it in my bones where the cancer was lodging itself. So that's the story up to now. Oh, I have 2 minutes. Okay. So this morning I had a dream. I don't usually dream, and if I do, I don't remember them. But I dreamed of Dave in his yellow t-shirt, which he had worn during some of the last days of his life. And he was upset about something. And it was something that he was upset about. And there was a familiar pattern in our exchange. It was so familiar that caused me the sorrow and the grief, is that it was a pattern we had never worked out. We had never figured a way to deal with it. And there it was again, presenting itself as a dream, like 2 weeks after he died. And I thought to myself, well, we will never figure that one out. That one is just one of the ones that is going to be there. It wasn't a big thing, but it was just one of those things that caused tension and friction between us. And it was sad because it was so familiar. I just went, oh, I know this one. But, yeah, that too. So I'm feeling like that's part of, well, it is obviously part of grieving, but that kind of feeling that is arising may become more familiar. I don't know. And I think that's the great thing about grieving, is we just don't know. And we can call anything grieving. Any state that we're in while we've had some huge loss is grief. And I like to think of it that way. that I don't have to know in advance. I can't prepare myself for it. It's just coming at me. And I'm doing my best to stand up. Okay. Thanks for being here today. May the goodness that arises from our practice and from this act of sharing be a benefit to all beings everywhere.